The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. This is Christine with Community Force. We'll be getting started shortly. We're waiting for a few attendees to join. As soon as they join, we'll go ahead and continue with the session. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So today, of course, we're going to be doing the Community Force training. We're going to be covering the Global Administrator tasks. And this is session 2 of 2 sessions that we've held. We did hold a session last month. In that session, we covered the Global Administrator Task Session 1, and we covered the site settings. So the site settings on that administration dashboard were covered in that. So of course, if you didn't attend that session, feel free to go to your knowledge base by clicking the help on your site, and that will take you to the knowledge base where you can search the webinars. You go to videos, then search webinars, and in the playlist, you'll see the listing for session number 1. And so please feel free to take a look at that, and that will give you an overview of the site settings. Now, of course, I'm Christine. I'm the trainer here with Community Force. And Daniel Ayala, our sales manager, was going to join us today. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to make it. But of course, if you have any questions in regards to, if you ever want additional training, additional one-on-one training, he would be the person that you would get the information in regards to purchasing that training. Now, of course, today during our webinar, all of the attendees have been muted. And as we go through our training session today, we will break midway through for a question and answer section, as well as at the end of the session, I will allow for questions and answers as well. So if you have any questions, don't wait till we get to that section to type them in, just to kind of help things move along smoothly. Feel free to go ahead and when you have a question, locate the question box in this dialog box that comes with GoToMeeting. If you don't see it, you should see this little orange arrow and this gray bar, something similar. I do have an upgraded version of GoToMeeting, but you should see something with this little orange arrow. You can click on this orange arrow and it will then open up this box. Look for the question section and it'll either have an arrow next to it like this dashboard does. Click on that arrow, it'll open up the question section, or you may have a plus or minus sign. If it's a plus sign, click it, open it up, and you'll be able to access the question section. And then once you access it, just type your question here in the box, and then, whoops, flipped the screen there, sorry about that. The question box, and then click send. I have a send to all, you'll just want to send it to me. And then, of course, once you send that question, when we get to that section, I'll go ahead and look at that information. And then, of course, if you need any assistance later on, you can always enter a support ticket as well. So on today's session, of course, the only individuals that are going to benefit from today's session is the global administrators. And the reason that is because the administration dashboard, which is the functionality that we're going to be talking about today, is only accessible by the global administrators. Now, department admins, I know, of course, some of you may be here on today's training. Feel free to sit in on it. That way you know that these settings are available so that if you need something set specifically for your process, then you can talk to your global administrator and see if they can make that adjustment for you. Now in today's session, of course, we're not going to cover all of the items on the administration dashboard. There's so many items that we like to break this down into 3 separate sessions. So of course, today we're going to be covering search filters, sponsoring grant-making organizations, status details, control mapping, the application invitation process, managing system messages, setting the master application, what is that used for, managing application funds, managing academic years, application help, and file upload. Now the manage academic years on the grant sites, I know some of you are grant users, that of course would be managing fiscal years. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let me just go ahead and pull up the site here. Give me a second. So I pull that up. And of course, I will be showing this on the scholarship site, but know that the grant site is this very similar. You may just have a few icons that may say grant instead of scholarship. So like I said, the first item that we're going to be starting with today is going to be one from the home dashboard. We're going to be covering items here in the administration icon. So I'm going to click on that icon. And this will open what I call that administration dashboard. And on the administration dashboard, the first item we're going to discuss are search filters. So some of you may wonder, what are search filters? Search filters are used in the creation of our fund setup. So if you're setting up scholarships, so if I go back out to home here and set up scholarships, if you are activating site search filters on those funds, then when you set up those specific funding sources, you notify what search filter belongs to the specific scholarship. So how search filters are used is the system. You identify the search filters you wish to activate, and I'll show you how to activate those. And then you have certain criteria that the applicant must meet in order to be eligible to apply for that specific funding. And what search filters do is, this is just for the applicants when they are looking for applications to apply to. This isn't search filters in regards to managing fund criteria, you on the back end matching funds to applications. That's a different process. This is creating a search capability for your applicants when they come to the site. So when an applicant logs into the site or comes to your site, they have a search screen. And on this search screen, you can activate the search by eligibility. And what this allows the applicant to do is search for a specific application form based on the criteria that you've created in these search filters. And this is mainly used for organizations like universities that have hundreds of scholarships, and each scholarship, of course, has its own application. And so applicants want to know, what scholarships are available to them. They don't want to have to scroll through a list of 100 applications. Here they can come in, run these search filters, search for eligibility, and then it would return the applications that met that search criteria that they searched on. And then they have the option to choose whether they would wish to apply to that or not. That's what search filters do. So of course, to set up the search filters, I'm going to log back in, go to that administration dashboard. And search filters are set up here in the search filters icon. And when you first open it up, you will see we have some preloaded search filters on the site. If you're not using search filters and you have that turned off in site settings, there is a site setting in the general settings of the site settings. That site setting is called Enable Search by Eligibility Criteria. And if you put that to no, of course, none of this search functionality is going to be activated. But if you do use the search filter functionality, then you would want to make sure that site setting is set to yes. And then you come in here to this search filters. And the ones that are populated already, they're there more for an illustrative purpose, or these are ones that a lot of our universities use. So when it comes pre-populated, then they don't have to recreate this list. But if you don't use these lists, you can always go in and edit the listing, remove what's here, and create your own search filters. Now you'll notice on search filters, you're only given the ability to activate 20 different filters. You'll notice these columns here say no. Some of them say future use because they haven't been activated. So if I scroll back up here, it's going to be kind of a long list. You'll see if it says active yes, the active yes means that it's active on the search filter screen. Required means that the search filter, when an applicant's searching, if it says required yes on this screen, that means that they must search on that criteria. It has to be a search that they do. And then hidden from search, you can create search filters to put onto your funding sources for your internal staff to just kind of see what criteria is. You can build those and not use them for the applicants. And that's what this hidden from search is. This would be, I want to create a search filter to put on my funding source, but I don't want applicants to have to search on it, or I don't want applicants to see this search in their search screen. So if this said hidden from search yes, then it wouldn't be on that front search screen. It would only be when you're building the fund, setting up that fund, and the fund setup, that search would be located there. Then of course here, it's just like creating a question, the external name. So this is that label that they would see so that they know what they're searching on. This is as it shows to the applicant. And then internally, you have a name, a label for internal staff, how it would appear to you internally. Now, of course, there's two filter types. There's a drop down and a multiple select. And I'm just going to show you quickly here how to edit a search filter. Since there's 20 of them, all of them are here on the site built. So in order to use any of these, you would have to, if you want to activate some that aren't used, like this one says future use, then you need to use this edit icon. So I'm going to scroll back up here on the larger one here at the very top, so it'll close it down a little bit. And there's an edit icon. So I'm going to click the edit icon. And when you click that edit icon, it opens up these fields so that you can populate them. And then of course here, this drop down, this is when they are selecting. Do you want them to select on multiple items or just be able to select on one? Multiple select would give them check boxes that they can check in and select multiple items from the listing that you build. And of course, a drop down would have only allow them to select a drop down from the listing. Only one, they can only filter on one of those items. Now the XML name, that is an name, you can see a lot of them aren't populated. If sometimes there is some functionality that our team sets up and we use the search filters to link to certain criteria, and if you have that on your system, it's a special setup functionality, then we use this XML name to use that linkage and building of questions. And that's important, that XML name, to be consistent. And then also you'll notice if you use list items here, this is a little different from drop downs and building questions, because of course when you're building drop downs and questions, you have a label field and a value field. And so you're doing listing the item twice when you're building questions. But in this instance, when you're building drop downs, just like you see this one here, this male, female, other, it's just the item and then no space to separate in between each value. So we have male, and then we use the tilde symbol, which is that shift key next to your 1 on your keyboard. And then you type the next word, and then the next separator to the next item would be used with the tilde. Now, if you have spaces within your values, so like here, you see Africa, all, and then you see Africa, Algeria. You can see spaces in between those words, that's fine. It's when you go from one item to the next, one value to the next, you want to use this tilde as that separator. So that's how you activate them. And then of course you can always change the sort order, like if you didn't want this to be the first one in that listing, you can change the sort and adjust that. So that's pretty much all I had. And then of course when you do make these changes, you do want to hit save. If you don't hit save, then of course it's not going to save what you just activated. And of course, every time you save, you get this message. So just click yes and OK through it. And then that will update that search filter. So that's all I wanted to show you with search filters. Of course, and then once you activate them, they're going to be on that page, and they'll also be in the fun setup for the search filters. The next item I want to go into is the sponsoring organization. So sponsoring organization, let me click on that. How that is used, and everyone, when you get your site, you will at least have your organization as a sponsoring organization. How sponsoring organizations are used are, you could be an organization that is departmentalized, and especially universities, you have all these different departments, their own applications, their own team members, and they also have their own funds. Each department, and you want to differentiate by department which organization belongs to which group of admins, applications, and funding sources. Those that are familiar with building applications and setting up your funding source, you've probably seen a line item when you're setting those up, as well as creating user accounts for an organization, sponsoring organization name. This is where it's getting that listing from. So if you have different departments, you can go ahead and enter the name. This is also used like foundations who are maintaining funding for other foundations, and they want to separate all the foundations' funds from each other. And they have admins from one foundation having access to theirs, admins from another foundation only having access to their foundation's funds and applications as well. So what you do is you create the different organizations or the different departments. And if they have logos, you can upload the logo. So it's just a matter of coming in here, creating the name. Maybe some information, like what is the purpose of this organization? And then if you have an upload, a logo to upload, you can click the upload here, locate your logo on your browser. And then of course this is the parameters. It has to be a maximum height of 80 pixels and a maximum width of 400. That's the size of that logo that you can upload. And then once you upload it, it'll be located here in the sponsoring org. And then of course once you create it, you hit save. it's going to give you the message that you've saved it, and then the listing, and it'll be added to the listing. And then when you're creating your application form, you have that sponsoring org, and so you would want to make sure to select the correct sponsoring orgs that you want to allow access to that specific application form. When you're creating administrative accounts for users, you want to be able to, when you create those user accounts, choose the correct sponsoring org that they belong to so that they can access the applications that have been assigned to their organization. And when you're creating funding sources, that sponsoring organization, you would want to select the correct one for that. So I'll go show you real quick what I'm talking about. Sponsoring organization, so here's set up scholarships. I'll get to that one first because it's the easiest. When you're setting up a scholarship, here's that sponsoring org. This is where you can identify all of the organizations that are able to access that specific funding source. When creating users, and you're creating admin users, I'm just going to jump in on an applicant real quick here. It's going to have the same screen. Yeah, I'll just use this, add users. You'll see a sponsoring organization here. This is where then I'm creating an admin account. What organizations do they belong to that I want to give them access to so that they can access those applications and funds for just that organization. And then, of course, when you're building an application form and the setup of the applications, you will see in the general information screen organization as well. So then when you select these organizations, these are the only organizations that have access to this application form. On the admin, we're talking about the administration's side there. Okay. So that is sponsoring organizations. Let me go home, administration, sponsoring orgs, and how you would set those up and use those. The next item are status details. A lot of you in our that use Community Force, especially scholarship users, like to use status details. Now, status details, it's something optional. You don't have to use those. But what status details are, those are present in reports. They help you to filter on applicants as you're looking in reports. A status detail, mainly for one, in the evaluations dashboard, under an application form, for instance, applicant status. So of course you know our system, as an applicant is applying, our system has statuses that are automatic triggers. As an applicant moves through a process, they get triggered and moved to a status. So of course, like pending submission, when they first start, they're at pending submission. Then when the applicant clicks submit, our system automatically moves them to submitted. And then when you assign them in the review committee, they automatically go to under committee review. Statuses are automatic statuses, stages that an applicant gets moved to in the Community Force process on our site. It's an automatic. Status details, however, are a means for our clients to build their own steps and stages to fit their process. So of course, say once an applicant submitted, you have staff members that need to go in and maybe do a review for completeness. And at that stage, you're going to determine whether that applicant should move forward to review. So you may disqualify them. Of course, you're here, our status is going to be showing submitted because you haven't put them to committee review yet. And you may want to mark that you've disqualified them. How do you do that? That's where the status details come in. So you can see there's a standard list that comes on the site. These status details are all predefined or can be changed. I shouldn't say predefined, can be changed by you, the client. Now we have a general list that comes built on the site, but the listing is not one that you don't have to use that listing. That's where the status details comes in over here in the site setups. in the administration dashboard. This is the status detail list that you see when you hit that drop down. And so you can see here, it's unlimited as to how many you can add. To add a status detail, so you can see it comes preloaded with 10. But of course, if you don't want to use all 10 of these, or of course, you've changed the names of all of these 10, then you can add more by clicking the Add Applicant Status Detail. One word of caution with status details are if you've already used a status detail, you do not want to delete it by clicking the red X, and you do not want to change the name of that status detail if you've already used it. And that is because if you go in and delete it, any applicant you've used that status detail on, it will delete it from that applicant. And if you change the name of a status detail and you've used that old name on an applicant, it will now change it to that new name on the applicants that you used it. So in those instances, if you've used a status detail, do not delete, do not change them. That's where you can, if you notice this active column here, you can make them inactive, and then they'll no longer show in that drop-down listing. But of course, then if you need another one, then you would want to create a new one by clicking the Add Application Status Detail. So to add one, it's just a matter of coming here, clicking Add, very simple. Type in the name, give it a description. Why are you creating this? Maybe what's the use of your process? The order, you want it to fall. So when you're looking at that listing, that drop-down listing, what's the order you want this to be in the list? Maybe you have a certain steps and stages and you want to put these status details in the order that those steps and stages fall. So then you can give it an order number. And then of course, this is what makes it active and inactive. So if I wanted to create a new one, I'm going to want to activate it. So I want to make sure and put a check mark in there. And then I just hit Save and Exit. Click OK, and you'll see now it's in the listing ready to use. If I'm fresh to the Community4 site, I've never used these status details, I want to change the ones that are there. All I have to do, of course, is just come in, click the edit icon next to the one I want to change. Come up here and then change the text to what you want it to say. You can change the description. If you want to change the order, maybe you don't want it to be number 1. I want it to be number 3. I can do so. And then just hit Save and Exit again. And then you'll notice it changes the sort order there. If I haven't used some of these and I just kind of want to clean house, you can always come in and hit the red X to delete them. But of course, remember, do not delete them if you've used them, because if you delete one that you've used, then it will no longer be available. Again, that's where you want to make it inactive. So if I did use this one and I don't want to use it anymore, then I come in here, click the edit, just remove the check mark, hit Save and Exit, click OK, and then it's no longer active. And then that's not going to be in the drop-down listing anymore. And then I would go and click Add Applicant Status Detail and create a new one that would be the one replacing it. Okay, so that's it for status details. The next item I'm going to touch on is the control mapping. So clicking on control mapping. So what control mapping does is it allows you to change the control name labels on the icons that are located on all of our various dashboards. Now, one rule of thumb of caution, of course, is if you change any of these label names. So when I'm talking about label names, this icon, scholarship search filters, sponsoring organizations, status details, that's the label of those icons that is going to be affected in the control mapping. So if you change any of these names, that's fine. However, you want to make a note of what the old name, control name was, because if you enter a support ticket and you say to the support team, you changed a control name and you call it your name, we don't know what you call it. We only know what our system and calls that specific control name. So if you change it, know what the old one was, when you enter a support ticket on a control or an icon and you say you clicked an icon, use the old verbiage, not your whatever you've named it for your team. And then that way the team will know exactly what item you're talking about. Because if you go in and change them, we don't know what you've changed them to. We have a standard control that we're used to calling them. And so that's what we go by internally. But you can change them. So if you wish to change them, then of course here on the administration dashboard, you can come here. The one thing you don't want to change in controls that does open up, but you can cause some issues with the system is the menu, the actual dashboard names. So like home, applications manual, manage text, there is some hard coding in the background. And you also don't want to change a name to one that's already called that because it will cause some issues in the long run. So if you want to change a control name, you just click edit. When you click edit, it opens up the fields here. The ones that are bolded are those actual menu names. But like if I wanted to change set up users to create user accounts, I would just come in there, type over it, and then I would hit save. And then it's going to say, are you sure you want to change that? I'm going to say yes, click OK. And now when I go out, you'll see that that specific icon, instead of saying set up users, now says create users. And that's how you change those controls. So of course, back administration, control mapping, I'm going to change it back. There we go. And then hit save. And then that's how you would change it. Okay, so that's control mapping. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there because the next item is going to be a little bit longer to talk about, the application invitation process. And just see if we have any questions and answer any questions that you might have at this stage. So let's see if we have any here. Okay, someone is asking a question about, is there a multi-language support option? I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. With 9.5, we do have the capability to allow for multiple languages on the site. There is the capability for an applicant when they're applying, they can change the language. There can be a language selection. However, that does cost, you would have to contact the implementation team to have that implemented. And then also you would need to be able to get those languages. There's a purchase through Google to be able to get the languages to be able to have that converted. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but that is a 9.5 functionality. And you can talk to the sales team, Daniel Ayala, in regards to what that would entail to get that functionality set up on your, if you are at 9.5, of course. So yes, sponsoring organizations. So if you have 20 people on a team, and not all 20 of them are maintaining certain applications, and these are department admins and global admins. Of course, or any admin that you've got created on the site, and you only want them to have access to a certain application and the funds that they're responsible for, then that's how you would have to create a sponsoring org. And I wouldn't do you would do the team name like you would do a department. This is usually best beneficial for departments and, of course, other organizations that you're maintaining for. But you would have that team, and when the application's created, you would want to make sure in the sponsoring org you selected all the possible organizations that can access this, as well as the global admin needs to be able to access it. So you would have a generic one that would have access to all, an organization that you would allow access to all, so that that person can get into it. But when you create the application, you create the team member, and you create the funding source, you would want to make sure that you selected everyone who needs to have access to that if you're using it in that manner. The status details. So yes, so when you are sending emails, so if you're sending emails, you do have the ability, of course, one, if you're in the evaluations applicant status detail, you can use this to come here to applicant status. And if I filter, notice you can filter on a status detail. So if I filtered on maybe just preliminary award, I only wanted my preliminary award applicants to show. Maybe I want to send them a quick email, all of my preliminary award. I can do it this way, click notify, and send an email to just the ones I've selected based on that status detail. And then also in the notification center, under this application form, I can go to the notify tab, and I can say pick a specific applicant status detail, maybe preliminary award again. It'll tell me how many it's found, and then based on the application I'm in. And then of course I can send an email. I can schedule that email to go out. So you can filter, use that as on filtering. The same as when you're going to the review process. When you're setting up the assignments in your review process to your reviewers, you have that filter available to be able to filter on so that you only select the applicants based on the specific filter. Again, sponsoring organizations, staff members, anyone who has administrative rights. So of course everyone comes with licensing, department admin, global admin. Those are your licensings. However, some clients have role types that they've set up for applicants. That's our next training, how to set up different role types, where you may have one staff member where you want to allow them access to the applicant status screen and only be able to get to that applicant status screen and help you with review for completeness. When that applicant's set up, you select a specific role type that is an admin role type. Those are the types of roles for sponsoring organizations that you would connect people to have access to those applications. Okay, and if you have any special requests on items, of course, right now there's nothing that does automatic triggers of emails other than our system emails that are triggered from certain events that happen. So anything else that is not covered, that's a special request, please enter a support ticket for that. If it's not something that's automatic, which that does not do anything, that is not an automatic thing, then please enter a support ticket and enter a request for that. And someone on the support team, one, they'll add it to the list of possible enhancements. Or two, if it's something that you really feel like you would want, then you need to enter a support ticket for that. Okay, so we're out of time and we need to move on now. So if you did have any questions I didn't cover, feel free to enter a support ticket. If you're still in the implementation stage building, please feel free to talk to your implementation specialist. And then of course, if you have one-on-one training coming, if you're new with implementation, we'll have that one-on-one training, and I'll be doing that training session with you. So keep note of these questions if we weren't able to cover them. And if you are scheduled for a training session, I can always discuss them at that time. But we do need to move on. So I apologize if we weren't able to get to all of your questions. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the administration dashboard. And the next feature I want to discuss is the application invitation. So application invitation is a special functionality that is used to invite someone to an application form that is private. So a private application would be something you wouldn't publish. You would build the application, you would set up the funding source, and when you set up the fund in the setup scholarship here, you would not publish it. So like this one here, this 2015 application is not published. That would be an application that I could privately invite someone to. Now, before you can invite someone to an application, they do have to have a user account set up. They're applicants, of course, so they would have to have applicant accounts created on their behalf so that they could log in and be able to access the application to apply to it. So to invite someone to the application invitation, there's first some functionality, some setup functionality that go along with this. With the application invitation process, there's two ways that this can function. One, the first way is scenario number one. You invite an applicant to apply to the application form. And when you invite them, they receive a link in an email. And of course, in that email, there would be a link that they can click on to access a login screen. They would have to access that login screen directly from that link. That's the only way they get this special login. It looks the same as the login, but it's actually a special login. And when they log in with their account, it automatically, since they went through the link, directs them to where they can see this application that you've invited them to, and they can choose to apply to it or not. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two is you can invite an applicant to apply to an application form. You can still provide the link for them, but instead of them having to click on that link, log in through that link, click apply, you can have in the invitation process where it will automatically start that application for them. So it's now in a started pending submission status. So of course, every applicant that's started their application form and is in that pending submission status, of course, they have their My Applications tab. Their My Applications tab then would show the application you invited them to. They can click it as started. They don't have to click apply. It's already started for them. They can click that application name in their application dashboard and continue the application and then start the completion of it that way. That's the second scenario. So in site settings, depending on which scenario you want to use to invite applicants, in site settings, you would need to activate accordingly. The item here, it says enable automatic application creation. Right here, I got the wrong one. Enable automatic application creation through application invitation. If it's yes, then that's when it automatically invites, creates the application, puts it in their My Applications tab. If I selected no, then of course when they, what it would do is, of course, in the email, they get the link. They have to click the link to log in. They would have to log in, they would see the application, and then choose to apply themselves. They would have to click that apply button themselves. And there's an email in the system that goes out with this process and the notification center. The email in the notification center, of course, you would, depending on which process you use, it's this application invitation. You would want to make sure and adjust your email template to represent the process that you determined you wish to use. Do you want them to have to click the link and apply, or do you want it to be in their My Applications tab? So that this message you want to adjust accordingly, because this is the email. As soon as you invite them, that gets sent out. Now, another setting is if you just want to invite them, but you don't want the system sending them an email with any of that information as to how you can invite them, you can add them to the invite list. However, you are responsible outside of the system to notify that applicant as to how to access that application form. If you don't send that invite, you would have to build a invitation process of your own, where you would have to email them on your own, notifying them how to do that. And in that scenario, if you're not sending an email, you're better off selecting the option to have the application automatically started, because of course the other one, you don't have a link, it's not going to create a link for them, and you don't have the link to give to them. So if you're not going to use the email, then you need to make sure the site setting is set to automatically start the application for them, so that all they have to do then, you can just send them an email and tell them it's in the My Applications tab. So if you want to turn that email capability off, there's a site setting that says disable automatic notification for application invitation. That turns the whole process off. More than likely, you don't want to turn it off. You want the system to send an email. But some of our clients wanted the ability to turn that off because they wanted to notify the applicants themselves. But if you turn it off, then you're going to want to make sure that you do have the enable automatic set to yes. So to invite an applicant, of course, you come here to application invitation and you select the application. It does have to be within the date range. The start and end date has to be within range to see this. As soon as you choose the application, you can filter to search for a specific applicant, and you can search based on a certain applicant that belongs to an organization if you want to set up applicants and tie them to sponsoring organizations so that you can only invite them to those organizations. That has been used to do that as well. Applicants can have sponsoring organizations linked to them. They, of course, when they create their account, they can't select an organization. So if you tie applicants to specific organizations, then you have to go in manually as the admin into the create users, find their accounts, and select the organizations you want them to belong to. And then when you come here, you can filter, and then it'll only give you the applicants that are part of that organization. So of course, once you come here, select the application. The list on the left here are the applicants you have available in your system. These are all your applicant accounts, everyone that has an applicant account. You would come here, select the applicant, hit the directional arrow, move them to the assign section. This would show you who you have ready to assign. Now they're not assigned yet. You add them to the box to the right, and then you hit save. And then once you hit save, it will then automatically assign that applicant. And there's a listing down here that shows you that application and who you've invited it to. Depending on if you have the email activated on, if the email is turned on, then as soon as you click save, it sends that email out. That's the process. As soon as you click save, boom, it sends it out. And it shows you the date and time that it sent it. So that's how you use the application invitation process. And there is a separate guide on Module 6 that I've attached to today's training that covers that in more detail as well. Another item where you have the ability are system messages. So system messages, as you notice, like when I did this update on this application invitation, I clicked on it here, and when I clicked to add someone, let me move this person over here and see this message. This is a system message. A lot of the messages have numbers. If you have a message and you're reading it and you're not wanting that to be the message you want to see when you click that, maybe you want to change that message. Capture the number. There'll be a number on a lot of them. And when you want to change, you can change a numbered message under Manage System Messages. Here on the site, you'll see here's the message code and the message that it says. So all you need to do is once you have the code, come here, click on it, type the number in if you know it, hit search, and then it'll show that code below. And then all you need to do then is just click the edit icon. It'll open up that message, and then you can feel free to change it. Now, one word of extreme caution: if you have a system message and in that system message you see these brackets, those are merging to that specific item. Do not, in message descriptions, remove brackets or add spaces or remove the item completely. That is an important piece on that specific message. You do not want to remove that. If you remove it, then that message is, a lot of times some of these are to applicants. They do not see the correct message that they need to see. This is a site-wide setting. Remember, all of these settings that we're talking about today affect the system site-wide. So do not remove anything in brackets on those system messages. That's important information. Then, of course, if you make a change other than that, around that, the text, then, of course, you'd want to hit save to save that change. The Setting of the master template. So set master application. So you've probably noticed on the site, on everyone's site, the majority of our sites, in the build of the applications, you see you have a master template. So that you're allowed one master template per site. And the master template our team usually uses when we're building. We create the master template and we build all of your applications into the master template, all your sections, all your questions, and then we use that to clone. And what's nice about the master template is as we're building, of course, and we've made 3 applications while we're building, and then we realize in one of the applications there was a typo on one of the questions, and that question's in all 3 applications. We don't want to have to go to all 3 and change it. We can actually go to our master template and make the change in the master template and then push the changes from the master template down to all those applications that we've built cloning from the master template. It's looking at the section XML name and the question XML name to find those matches to push items down. Now it can only push to items that are not, to applications that are not active. So that means it's an application that has not gone live yet, that is, the start date is not current. The start date has to be in the future. It cannot be an active application to be able to push that down. But that's what the master application does. So of course your first step is you build your application and you, like you would normally build an application, and then the application that you've deemed to be the master template, you would then go into the administration dashboard, go to set master application, click on that, tell the system what the application is that is going to be that master template, which we've already done. We'd hit select, hit set as master application, and then it would show up here in the top, which is what we have here. This is my master template application. Once you set it, that will then be the master template. No one can apply to it. It's only for master template purposes. If I go back to the build and you can see my master template, the one that's been deemed, this one here, you'll see I can't delete it. And it doesn't show up in any of the drop-down listings to be able to tie a funding source to it. You cannot apply to it. It's just a template that's used for building other applications. The Manage Application Funds here, this is the same as Manage Application Funds in the setup of an application form. So if I go home, set up application forms, and those that are using this with the funding source, then you'll understand this piece. If you're not using it, then it won't have any meaning to you, but this is for when applicants have those one-to-many common applications where you have one application, multiple funds tied to it. And of course, in your build, you have in the setup of the application, you add those. Let me find one here. Manage application funds in the setup. For that application, you're adding the funds that belong to that specific application. This is the funds that are funding the application process. So those that are using this, you're familiar with it. That was in it. There's another training on setting up funding sources that talks in more detail as to the purpose of this. But just so you know that this is on the specific application. So when I select an application and I go in on it, that's just for that application. That's how I manage application funds for just that one application. However, if you have 10 applications and you need to set all those funds on 10 different applications, instead of going one by one, going into the application build, clicking on that icon for that application, adding the funds, then going out, going to your next application, you can actually here on the administration dashboard, click the Manage Application Funds, select multiple applications and do it one by one. Select this application, do your funds, then go to the next application, add your funds, go to the next application, add your funds. It's just a means to do multiple applications and add those funds without going in and out so much. Manage academic years, which is this icon here. This is the chart that determines the academic year on grants. It's called fiscal year. So of course, when you're creating an application form and you enter a start and end date for your deadline and the general information, this date and this date, then as soon as you hit save, it says, okay, this date and this date falls in this academic year. This is the academic year or the fiscal year that has to be linked to the fund source. So this is the academic year that the funding is going to be paid out. So of course, when you first get the site, this comes defaulted with academic year January to December. Remember, this is the year of the grant, or the funding source, the scholarship or the grant, the fellowship, the fund that is funding it. They may be applying in one period, but the funding needs to come out of what period? So the academic year this is your academic year. Some of you have your dates go from June 1st to July 31st is your academic year. So of course this chart would need to be adjusted. Now of course you can't just come in here and start in 2018 and start making a change to the chart, because if you add a date that falls in another range or you add an academic year that's already there, you're going to get an error message. So you always need to, if you're going to adjust this chart, start at the back end, go all the way to the end, and start at the bottom of the list and start moving forward, making your changes. You just go into the edit, click edit, make your adjustments to your correct dates, hit save and exit, and then you can go to the next one. That's the purpose of that chart. That's how the system keeps track of funding and awarding. It's very important that the application and the funding source have the same dates, because the system, when it gets to looking at funds, it then says, okay, this is the fund. You say, okay, I want to know what was awarded out of this period for this fund. And then it shows based on the application, it says, okay, for that period, this is the application that was used. So that's how it connects. So that's the importance of that academic year. So application help, you'll see here, application help is this open help here. If I click open help, you'll see this dialog box that opens up. From here, you can click edit help and edit the specific screen we're on. If you don't like the verbiage, this is the help screen that explains the screen you're currently on, the items. It'll give a description so you can see like search filters, sponsoring orgs. So of course, if you change control labels, you're probably going to want to go in and change the text in these open helps. So it's just you open it up. Usually if you're on the page, it'll open up the text for that page. And then you can go in, make the changes, click save, and that'll show the next time you open up that text, it'll show that specific text that you've changed. So of course here, you can get it from that edit, but if you had multiple ones you wanted to change, you can come here. You would want to make note of the name of that screen and then find the screen here on the listing. You can search for it. You would click on it, edit, and then make the change accordingly. That one didn't have any text. So see if I can find one real quick. Oops. So like this one here. Let's just click on that one. So here's some with text, manage home screen. There's that screen. And then if I wanted to change it, I could. Or you can reset it to what we originally had. By hitting the reset, it'll put it back to what our original text said. So that's just another means to get to that help screen. So again, you can get to open help, click the edit, it'll open up the one you're currently on. But the one on the administration dashboard, of course, this one, application help, allows you to access all of those different screens and make adjustments to them. And then the final option I wanted to show you, this functionality here. This functionality is usually something our team will use, but it is out there on your administration dashboard. So just so you know what it is. So what this does, the functionality of the file upload is, let's say you have a document and you want to embed that into an area that you need to create a link to the document to another URL page. So you want to have a document that's embedded in some text somewhere. You don't want to have it as an upload to a question. You're not doing a file upload in a question, but you actually have text, like in the instruction page, in an editor box. You've typed text, and then you want to embed a document in that text. In an instruction area is usually where you do this. Maybe you activated some text tabs, and you embedded a document in those text tabs to provide information to your applicants. Or maybe you have here and set up scholarships. Maybe in the description of the scholarship, here in the description field down here, you want to create a link like this to a document. Well, in order to create a link to a document, you have to have that document loaded to where it's loaded onto a specific web page with a URL. So in order to do that, that's where file upload comes in. So in the administration dashboard, you have this file upload. This is where you would browse your site to find the document you want to upload. And it only allows you to upload documents that are only a specific size. That size is only 1024 kilobyte KB. And so you can upload that document. You would click it, click open. It would load that document. And then when you hit save, of course, right now, my functionality, this is a new version. I've talked to the team earlier today. They're working on it. But when you click save, what would happen is, and this is something that's important as part of this process. Let me get this to open up here to the bottom here. You will, as soon as you click save, and this is important, get this to come over here, you get a message, which is this message right here. It says important. This message text will open up. Do not click OK. Once you click OK, you no longer have access to get this URL. So what you do is you upload the document, you click save, do not click OK yet, then take this message and you can, this is the URL to upload, so you need to capture this URL. So what you can do is once you get the message, just kind of highlight the URL. I kind of Control C, I'll right click Control C, and then I'll take another document and Control V and paste it in so I have it. I've copied it, so it's typed the exact same way that this URL is. Once you've captured it and you've copied it somewhere and you've got a copy of it, because you cannot retrieve this right now. There's no way to retrieve it once you've gotten this URL. Then you can click OK, and then you can go and wherever you wish to embed it, wherever you have that link capability to link to a document or link to another web page, that's the URL, that's the web page that you would want to enter the address for that specific item that you're wanting to link to. So that's pretty much all that I had to show you today with the site settings. So let's see if we have any further questions. And then after we look at those questions, let's see if I can get back to the site here. We can then close the session for today. So we have a couple questions. Let me see here. So the upload applicant credentials, that will be covered in our next session. So that's why there was some things that we skipped today that have to do with creating user accounts, allowing users access to the system, and that will be covered in the admin task number 3, which will be held on December 20th. That'll be our next session. In that session, we'll talk about creating users, talk about managing role types, how to assign role types based on funding sources, uploading applicant credentials. That's part of creating a listing. So in the create user accounts, when you're creating user accounts, you can upload a batch of applicants or reviewers using an pre-formatted Excel spreadsheet. That will, and as well as external system settings, password policy, all that has to do with allowing access to the site. So that'll be covered in the next session. So any questions you have in regards to that, then we'll cover in another session. So in the file upload, this is only, so let's say you have a document you want to provide to all of your reviewers. The best way to do that more than likely is to create a message question, not use the file upload. The file upload is only in a description page or someplace where you don't have the ability to build a question and attach a document. This is in a description, like the description of that funding source. You need to embed a document. You know how you can create a link to a document or create a link to your web page, and on your web page you have specific information. This is a means to do that. Usually, and somebody asked the question about providing a document for just your reviewers to see. When you're creating that task for your reviewers, you can actually create a message question, and in that message provide a document in that. Not using the file upload, you would upload into that specific message question type. There's a file upload button you can, when you're building that question, and that's the best way to get information to them. It's the same document to every reviewer, and you would create that question to do that. Some of you don't have the file upload functionality. 9.5, it is on there. Like I said, this is something our team uses, but if you have access to it, then it's there, you can use it, but it's mainly for our team to use and embed files. But if you see it on there, that's why I pulled it up in the training, then it's something that is out there and available if you would like to have it activated. And you can always enter a support ticket to have that activated. But that's usually with the build of our team. We're using that, so it's not activated on a lot of sites, but some sites do have it activated. Yeah, so that the instruction page for your reviewers, so how that works, let me just show you real quickly, is in the evaluation, when you're building a task, I should find one that I think has a task built to it here. Let's try this one. In the setup and tasks, when you're building the task, so like here's a score sheet. And there's no question. So when I'm adding a question to a task, I can have document. You can attach the instructions to your reviewers. You can just add this question, please review the following document. And then here, create a message text. And then here, upload that document to that question. I'm just going to grab one real quick here. I'm going to take this document, upload it. Hit save and exit. Oh, one. Save and exit. Save and exit. Come on. Okay, so here's the question. That question will then, when the reviewers are looking at their reviews, they have the scorecard. And the very first question at the top of the scorecard is this one. Please review the following document. They will see the name of that document I just uploaded next to that question. They can click on the document and read it. And then once they read it, then that's how you can provide a document that every single one, it would be everyone would see it when they're in that scorecard. They would see that question, they can click on it and see an instruction page that you wanted to provide to them. Otherwise, if it's something you don't want to put in a scorecard, then you just send them an email with the instructions as well. But this would be, that question would be present. They could click on it and see it on every scorecard that they're reading. If they needed parameters and you wanted them to remember every time they're scoring, it's there and available for them to read. So that's just a little helpful hint for you. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so that looks like that's all of our questions that we have for today. So again, we will, like I said, be doing another training. And also on today's session, let me get this to pull up here. Up here. And here. This is not showing. Okay, so you'll notice at the bottom of the page, you will see a handout section under questions. There should be a section called handouts. Click on that arrow or plus sign, open it up, and you will see the handouts that are covering the items we covered today. And make sure if you're a grant client, you get the grant guides. And if you're a scholarship client, make sure when you hover over these application invitation setup, this is the application invitation process. It'll show you the entire name, if it's not expanded, of course, and you'll be able to see if it says grants at the end, then that's the grants. If it says scholarships, then that's for scholarships. And then make sure you get the correct global admin guide. The global admin guide will cover the icons that we covered today. Then, of course, December 20th, we'll be holding the third session for the global admin site, and that will cover anything regarding to creating user accounts and allowing applicants access to the system. All those areas that we didn't cover today, those are kind of grouped into that specific training session. So if you have any further questions, as always, you're always welcome to enter a support ticket through Zendesk, as well as you always have the ability to get to the knowledge base on your specific site. Knowledge bases can be accessed using this help link here at the bottom of your page when you're logged in as an admin. And whatever site, if you have scholarships, it'll take you to the scholarship knowledge base. If you have grants, it'll take you to the grants knowledge base. And also under videos, under webinar, after each session, we do load the most current webinars to that specific area. There is a playlist here. So right now you can see that was session 1 was the last one. So that's usually the last one is usually the first one when you come to the page. But you can hit the playlist and access other training videos of webinars that we've held if you want further information on an area. So again, that closes our session for today. I will leave it open a little bit so that you do have the ability to access that handout. To give you a chance to click on them. You will want to click on them and download a copy. And so that will take you a couple minutes to do that. So I'll leave it open about 5 more minutes so that you can have access to that. So we will go ahead and close for today. And again, I appreciate your time, and we will see you next month, December 20th. Thank you. Bye.